In all young men is the desire to contend with the world, to strike at the heart of things, to tear through the illusions of civilization and encounter something which is real and visceral. And this has always been achieved through initiation rituals. Scholars have reconstructed an ancient Indo-European initiation ritual in which young men would be exiled from the tribe and sent into the wilderness with nothing but wolf skins. Similar practices are common in the animal kingdom. Young wolves and lions will venture out on their own, often after being forced out of their pack or pride, to wander the wilderness and claim their own territory. Still today, many families hold the practice of evicting their children when they turn 18 or when they graduate college, but we no longer throw them out into the wilderness to pillage our neighbors. As we became more civilized, naturally, our initiation rituals did as well. But your fathers still had the Boy Scouts. What do we have? Call of Duty and Discord. When I was a child, as I drifted off to sleep, I would fantasize about fictional worlds. Often I would imagine that I was in a pre-civilized world, on a planet of endless wilderness, living in a hunter-gatherer tribe. Together, we would hunt, we would have wars, we would run like wolves under the starry sky. As I got older and encountered media like The Walking Dead, I began to fantasize about post-apocalyptic worlds in which civilization had been wiped away, and only the most real and essential things remained. The struggle to survive, the raw will to power, brotherhood, nature, family, war. As I drove to school, I would look out the window and imagine the buildings swallowed again by vines and forest, the remnants of the roads melting into the earth, nature reclaiming the brightly colored gas stations which so offended my eyes. And so, in Fight Club, when Tyler Durden spoke of a New York City swallowed again by nature, it struck close to home.
In the world I see, you're stalking out through the damn canyon forest around the ruins of Rockefeller Center. You'll wear leather clothes that will last you the rest of your life. You'll climb the wrist-thick cuts of vines that wrap the Sears Tower. And when you look down, you'll see tiny figures pounding corn, laying strips of venison in the empty carpool lane of some abandoned superhighway.
In Fight Club, what attracted me to the world of The Walking Dead was made explicit. The desire to tear through the falsity of civilization and to encounter the real through violence, to find brotherhood and purpose again in a plastic world. The path of young men, like all great heroes, is into the wilderness, not in civilization. It is only through the wilderness, through what is rugged and wild, through what is bestial, through all those things upon which civilization is built, and all those things which civilization suppresses and conceals. It is only through acquaintance and intimacy with those that the young man finds his place within civilization. But in modernity, we have no outlet to wrestle with nature, within or without. Yet we crave these things. We act them out in our fantasies. In FPS games, we go to war and kill. In Battle Royale, we hunt as a band of brothers, locked in the struggle for survival. Through the consumption of media, we seek to encounter what is visceral, real, and raw, yet it does not fulfill us. We consume and consume, but our cravings are not satiated. Again and again, the young man's desire to wrestle with the world, and thus come to know the true essence of both it and himself, is denied. And yet it is only when a man understands that he is a fundamentally violent creature living in a fundamentally violent reality that he truly knows himself and can build himself up from that foundation, just as civilization is built upon barbarity and violence. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh goes into the wilderness with his friend Enkidu, and they slay the monstrous guardian of the cedar forest, Humbaba. Then they cut down the cedars and bring them back to Uruk to build massive gates for the city. Gilgamesh's desire for glory brings him into the wilderness, where he encounters the bestial. And when he returns, he brings back something with him to enrich and strengthen civilization. This is the archetype which Carl Jung struck upon in his idea of shadow integration, and it applies both to the collective and the personal. Hercules enters upon his labors after killing his own family in a fit of madness, and thereby discovering the violence of his own nature. But through his labors, through wrestling with beasts and slaying monsters, he becomes a civilizing force and returns to civilization as its triumphant hero. The same archetype is played out with Jesus in the desert and the medieval ascetic monk in the wilderness. They go into the wilderness to wrestle with themselves and return with spiritual knowledge. However, just contemplating the evil of which you are capable, as Jordan Peterson advocates, is not enough. Shadow work, as the Jungians call it, is not enough. You must encounter real danger and make yourself dangerous. There is no replacement for this. Nietzsche wrote, "Of all evil I deem you capable. Therefore I want good from you. Verily, I have often laughed at the weaklings who thought themselves good because they had no claws." Nietzsche believed that down the road of the meek lay doom, that the taming and denaturing effects of our civilization were catastrophic. He believed that our great task in modernity is to reanimalize ourselves, to become wild again, and thus become whole again. If all of modernity can be conceived of as a progression towards the ever more civilized, and thus towards the ever more decadent, it is now time for us to return to the wilderness, and, with what we find there, to revitalize civilization. And for Nietzsche, this wilderness was the Greeks. But how can this rewilding be achieved practically for the individual in modernity? Learning a fighting sport is a practical way to strengthen yourself both mentally and physically. In a fighting sport, you are practicing encountering danger and conflict. It's scary to risk being knocked out or choked out by an opponent. Even if the risk of being badly harmed is low, you risk humiliation. But perhaps more importantly, by practicing a fighting sport, you are learning to assert yourself upon the world, to impose yourself upon your opponent to the point where they are forced to submit in combat, to impose pain and defeat upon them, and to assert your will as victorious. And for the over-civilized, imposing your will upon another and inflicting harm on another can be just as scary as risking harm or defeat. When I started jiu-jitsu, I would get beat up non-stop for the whole session. I'd come home covered in bruises and barely able to move. I even broke a rib. But there was nothing more cathartic and intensely satisfying than engaging in a raw test of will and strength with strangers. If you don't have the time or money for a fighting sport at the moment, lifting weights will also help you become more embodied and more confident, more comfortable taking up space, psychologically and literally. These things will do far more for integrating your shadow than contemplating the nature of evil. But that said, contemplating human nature, human history, watching nature documentaries, and studying the evolutionary history of life is also very helpful for understanding and coming to terms with the harsh nature of reality. And just as important is spending time actually in nature, engaging with it firsthand. Go camping, go hiking, go into the woods with a band of friends, or even explore a city together. Take risks and be wild. Scream into the mountains at the top of your lungs, run on all fours, and make animal noises. Become embodied again, and become acquainted with your own animal nature. All of this will also make you more attractive to women because it will make you confident and grounded, but also playful and wild. You will no longer fear violence or your own capacity for violence. You will no longer fear asserting yourself upon others because you will know your capabilities, how to assert force, and how to restrain it. You will no longer fear women or your own sexuality. You will be filled with a playful, vital, and grounded energy, like an ancient hero who has returned victorious from his conquests. However, even with all this, something is still lacking. The individual journey is not enough. Men need brotherhood. The Boy Scouts of America recently announced that they will be changing their name to Scouting America to be more inclusive. As our historic institutions collapse and men seek out new outlets for brotherhood, the opportunity arises for new orders, new bands of brothers to be formed, not just on the internet, but in real life. Orders which can carry on the ancient, heroic initiation rituals and traditions seen all across European cultures. Brotherhoods which can work to establish a new culture and re-establish ancient traditions, which can strive to instill within themselves and the coming youth vitality, vigor, and a thirst for adventure and new frontiers.